All right. Looks like a couple people are still joining, but it is 2 o'clock, so we'll go ahead and get started here. Um, Today, again, just to first cover a few housekeeping items. Obviously, we'll just be going through a short training webinar here with Tag Inspector to go through some of the advanced functionality to help you automate some of the processes around monitoring tags, auditing tags, with the end goal of validating complete and accurate data collection, both upfront and then as well as part of an ongoing process, but also to validate your tag policy to make sure that you're protecting users' data on your website, that data is not leaking to any unauthorized parties, and how the tool and some of the functionality within it can help you with those processes. As far as if you have any questions or anything as we're going through, on the right-hand side, there is a question pane, so please feel free to drop those in there. I'll try to cover as many as I can at the end here. And as always, feel free to reach out to us directly if you have any specific questions on your account or around functionality that we might be able to help out with. My name is Lucas. I'm the Tag Inspector Product Manager, as well as do work with clients around building those tag policies, as well as putting governance processes in place for ongoing monitoring, as well as data collection validation. So to start here, obviously what we're looking at is our standard scan report. As many of you know, as users of the tool, what you're going to be able to see here is all the different tags, pixels that are loading on a site, how exactly they're getting there. The question is how can we automate the process and use some of the functionality within Tag Inspector to fully automate this process and make it possible and simpler in saving you time to monitor moving forward. So today what we're going to cover within the scans is the tag rules, how to create those, what those are, some of the use cases around those, as well as setting up new scans and applying those rules to those scans that we're running on an ongoing basis, using some of the functionality again to schedule different scans and just fully automate the process. So you can come in and just be alerted whenever something breaks. We'll also hop into the real-time module a little bit towards the end, just to go through some of the validation rules and what's possible with data collection validation there. So we have the scan reports, and we have all this great information in here. We have the overview. We can see what's there within our details. We can see that full list of different tags that are there. But how to automate this, how to highlight things that are not allowed so that we're not leaking data to unauthorized parties, and how to make sure that everything works moving forward. So to do that, what we're going to do is use our tag rules, which are one of the additional functionality available within the tool. To access the tag rules over here on the left-hand side of the pane, just click tag rules, and that will bring you to the manage policies area. If you have multiple rules, so if you're working on multiple sites or have different clients with different domains or just have different rules that you want to check at different times, all of them will be contained here within the tag rules area. To create a new rule, you'll just click create new rule. You'll come in and name it. And then select the different emails that you want to be alerted if ever your rule is violated. So this could be, if you're managing these scans for multiple different clients, it could be, different members of the team that you want to be alerted and to receive email alerts, just highlighting any issues that arise. Or it could be if it's, just your internal team and there's multiple different stakeholders that would be involved in this. We can just, separate them out with a comma, but provide multiple emails here. We have two different rule types in the scans. There's a whitelist and then there's a blacklist. With a whitelist rule, what you're able to do and how our system looks at this is nothing is allowed unless it's set to allowed or required within that rule. This is really useful for the governance use case. So if you have that list of different tags and platforms that you're aware of that are approved by security, approved by legal, and are actively being used by different teams within the organization, we can define those platforms and those tags within our whitelist. A blacklist rule, this is useful for if you're working, say, with an analytics implementation, and you want to make sure that your Adobe Analytics is firing on every single page and it is loading through DTM like it should be. We can use a blacklist rule there, and our system's going to look at every tag is allowed to be there unless it's defined as not allowed. But more importantly, if something is defined as required and it's not loaded, it's not on every single page, or it's not on the pages defined, and it's not loading in the proper manner, that's going to kick out a violation and an alert within the scan. For the purpose of this training, I'm just going to use a whitelist rule because we can apply all the different options within there. So I'll save that rule, and then it's going to bring me into where I can actually edit and create that policy. So to add additional conditions or add additional requirements within the rule, what I'm going to do is come up here and use just that add conditions button, and it will populate one for me. So for these are going to be high level around different just tag presence. So I can define, say, Google Analytics. We have all the different types in here, but typically it would be Google Universal Analytics, analytics.js. I can just say allowed. Well, in this case, for an analytics platform, you're probably going to set it to required. One quick little side note. If you're wondering if a particular tag is classified or how it's classified, the naming convention in here, if you just hop into the rule, all the different tags classified within the library are listed out in here. So if you're curious about, hey, can I check this, or do I need to maybe update or let us know if something's not classified, hop in here and take a look. If it's not there, just reach out to us directly, either through a contact form or just email me directly, and we can look into it and update that classification. Classifications are updated regularly, and different platforms, as they change some of the natures of their requests, those are updated as well. But it's a good piece to know, at least. But here, back to within the rule, I can define Google Universal Analytics as required. If I just leave it as this, it's going to, if Google Universal Analytics is allowed on the site, any other tag that would be found is going to kick out a violation. But if Google Universal Analytics is missing from a page, that's also going to kick out a violation. Now I can add additional conditions to this as well. So I can define different URLs that it should be on. So say you have a AdWords conversion tag as well. You could define Google AdWords conversion is required on a URL that contains whatever it is within that confirmation page that's within that URL structure. And so we're just going to look and say that if it's not on this particular page or type of page or classification of page, that's what's going to kick out that alert or that violation. I can also define the tag loading behavior. So Google Universal Analytics is required to be loaded through, let's say, Insighten. So this is super, super useful to identify any tags that are loading outside of your tag management system that you're using. One, if you're working on a migration. So if you're working on migrating tags and taking them from the source code and moving them into the tag management system, applying a rule defining that and then running a full site scan is going to help you identify exactly where on the site you still have that legacy tag or that legacy implementation still loading from the page source. Super useful in that migration context, especially around analytics. A lot of times we'll see that when clients go through a migration to a TMS, they might have double counting on some pages because they still have the hard-coded tag as well as the tag deployed through the tag management system. So this can help you just automate that process at a huge scale and save significant time in identifying those things. So I define these things that are required. I can then also add another condition for URLs or the sections of the site. And then I can come up here and add another condition for all the different things, for other tags that might be allowed or other tags that are required, as well as the loading behavior there. So just for example, I can say double click is allowed. I can say 360 yield is allowed. Whatever these different tags may be. So we translate, once we go through an audit of just running full site scans, identifying what's there, taking inventory, work with the business for identifying what should be there and what shouldn't, define those requirements here within the rules, and then automate that process for checking across the entire site and identifying any gaps or any violations in that policy that we've defined. So great. So now we have defined a policy. We've created that rule here within the Tag Inspector system. I just save that and remember the name, obviously example tag policy. Now I can go up when creating scans and apply that to those scans. So when it comes to creating scans, obviously up here in the top right hand corner of the user interface, we can just go up to start new scan. Here, step 1, enter in the URL that you would like to scan. Very self-explanatory, taginspector.com. I would define the number of pages. How our system works, I'm sure most of you are familiar, but if you're new to the tool, when you define the number of pages, say I define here 10,000. If my site is only, say, 500 pages, what our tool is doing, it's going through and crawling essentially twice. So first it's going through spidering the system and creating a virtual sitemap in essence. So we're going to identify all pages that we can find, and then our step 2 of the scan is our scans can actually follow that list of URLs. So if I only have 500 individual pages, my virtual sitemap essentially that we are creating is only going to have 500 pages. So the scan's only going to run 500 pages. It's not going to loop through the same pages over and over until it hits this limit. Now, conversely, if I have this set to 10,000 pages and my site is 30,000 pages, it is going to cut off as soon as it hits that 10,000 page mark. So I define the URL. I define the number of pages that I want to scan. In my second step here, I have some different options. I can include subdomains. I can choose not to include different subdomains. I can select my browser user agent. And then here in the advanced options is where I'll actually apply that policy that I just created to my scan. So here I can come and select my example tag policy. So that tag policy that I defined within the rule, I'm now saying that these rules, these conditions should be applied to the scan. Our system's going to go through, run the scan, have the results, and then automatically on our back end, we're going to compare the results of the scan to what your policy is that's defined. And again, just highlight any discrepancies and any errors there. Some additional options here within these advanced options when setting up a scan. I can scan specific pages. So if I only want to hit one section of the site, this is extremely useful if you have a massive site. You can break it up into different sections. So I might only want to hit category pages, or I might only want to hit one type of a product page or one type of a content page. I can define that here. So I can say URL contains, does not contains, matches regex. A ton of flexibility here, and you can really cut down on that size and that scope of the scan using this option. We also have the ability to remove query strings from different URLs. If you have an e-commerce site, for example, or even on a content site where a lot of your different pages are built around templates, we can rewrite those or remove those query strings so we only hit when we're creating our quote-unquote virtual sitemap, we're only hitting that template page or one of each type of page by adding in these additional conditions. I can also rewrite URLs to accomplish that same end goal. So I can say URLs with this pattern, substitute this type of URL, and then we'll only hit one of those different types of the page. Down here at the bottom, clear cookies on every page. The default is for that to be selected. I always recommend just to leave that selected, just because when it comes to, especially in the governance context, you might have tags that fire conditionally only for a new user, for example. Typically, you're going to get a larger picture of all the different tags because all tags are trying to fire for new users to be able to set their cookies. So in that context, I always leave that selected. Once I've defined what exactly I want to scan and using these advanced options to really narrow that focus, I can go to the final step when setting up a scan, and this is the ability to schedule. So when we talked about at the beginning using this functionality to really automate this process, you can create those rules to define your standards. You can set up the scan to run how you want it to, and then we can schedule it. So we can schedule these scans to run daily, weekly, monthly. If you want to run them every 2 weeks or every 5 days, while it's not an option here within the UI, you can reach out to us, let us know. We can set that up for you on the back end. But with those rules applied and with scans running automatically in a scheduled fashion, you're letting the tag inspector system just do that work for you and just highlight any discrepancies and any errors that are occurring. So all you're doing is just being alerted and notified, one, when a scan is complete, so you can go in, see the full results, take a look at all the different tags, coverage, all that good stuff that we know and love about the actual reports. But if you don't want to, dig into that, you can just receive email alerts and notices whenever something is awry in the setup. So that's everything here with the actual scans. Again, very, very useful for checking against your tag policy, for that governance, security, making sure that user data isn't going to unauthorized parties, as well as just an automated check if you're working on migrations, coverage, making sure there are no analytics issues due to tag coverage being off or double duplicate tagging on pages. Now, the next part that we'll cover here is our validation rules within our real-time module. So to get to the real-time area, if you have this capability enabled on your account, you can just click up here at the top on real-time and it will take you into that module. Now, scans in real-time work a little bit differently. Scans are obviously an automated crawler where we're simulating a user, going through the site, collecting those tag requests on each page load, initial page load to be able to show what's there, how it's loading, where is it. With the real time, it's not a crawl, it's not a scan, it's actually our own tag inspector tag that is sitting there on all pages that you have it deployed on, obviously. And we're just recording all requests that are happening in that live environment. So as actual users go through, interact with your page, complete different actions, we can, one, report on all the different tags that are firing on an ongoing, constant basis, but also validate the tags that are firing, making sure it's only authorized tags, as well as validate very granular data collection. So we'll do another training for the going through the reports and everything within real time. But today, just want to really focus on that automated piece. So with these rules. So the validation rules within real time work a little bit differently. There's a lot more that you're able to do, and you're also able to look down at a much more granular level. So here we name our rule, whatever it may be. We'll say analytics, collecting transaction data on order confirmation. So the rule that I'll create here, and just to show some of the different options, is exactly this. Analytics, collecting transaction data on order confirmation, making sure that when a user hits our confirmation page, that my analytics platform, and I'm just going to use Google Analytics as the example, is always one, firing, and two, always sending up a request with the transaction information contained within there. How these rules work, two different areas. So one up here, what we're actually testing and what we're actually validating, and then down here exactly when the rule should be applied or the condition under which it should be applied. I always like to talk about these and reference these similar to how your tag management system works. So you have your firing trigger and then your actual tag behavior. So typically I'll start down here. So the condition under when the rule should be applied. We have a lot of different options here. It can be all pages. So if you're just wanting to make sure that a particular tag is always firing, analytics, for example, you might just say on all pages, this tag should fire. We have other options here, session landing page, first, last session refer. So if they're coming from a particular source, number of user visits, number of user page views, page refer, global JavaScript variable, and then user click on an element, and then the current URL. For the purposes of this particular rule, I would either be using one of two different conditions. Either the current URL, I would say contains whatever it may be for your individual site that you're looking at, but it might contains confirmation. You can also use this global JavaScript variable and point this at the data layer. For the conditions on when the rule should be applied, I always say if you're using like a tag management system, mirror the trigger that you're using for the tag in there. So if I have Google Analytics firing on the confirmation page, but as opposed to it being a URL-based firing rule, if it's based upon a data layer push, so it might be on the event transaction ready. Whenever that transaction ready event is pushed to the data layer, that's when my transaction tag should fire. I will mirror that condition here within the rule. So in that context, if whenever on the transaction ready event is when my Google Analytics, enhanced e-commerce should fire, what I'll do is point it to the data layer, if that's how it's named, and then contains transaction ready. So whenever the data layer contains transaction ready, or the transaction ready event is pushed, on any page load in which that happens, or in any instance of a page when that particular value is populated within the data layer, I want my Google Universal or Google Analytics tag to fire, and I can just say loaded on the page, or I could say parameter set contains parameter value, or the request matches a regex. For a high level, I'm going to say parameter set. And for the transaction type information, obviously one of the keys is revenue. The parameter within a Google Analytics request for transaction revenue is TR. Out of the box standard if you're not hard setting that within the tag. So what this rule is doing is saying that whenever the transaction ready event is pushed to the data layer, so when the data layer contains that transaction ready value, then my Google Analytics tag should be firing, and it should be firing within that request the TR variable. Because that value is going to be dynamic, I'm just looking for the variable and making sure that it is actually being set, being populated, and being sent up to the Google Analytics servers. Down here, I can define when that value should be checked. The default is the window unload event. So when the user leaves that page, I always recommend just to keep that the same. The other option here is on DOM load, which is obviously a timing event on the page. If you have something that should be firing like first on the page on a page load for example, an initial page view, you could use that DOM load. But again, I always just recommend to use the window unloaded event, just in case there's a delay or something in the tag. At the bottom then, I can also then apply what sites, or select what sites I want that rule to apply to. So again, if you're working with multiple sites, or if you just have different quote-unquote sites set up within real time for different sections of your particular domain, you can select those different areas here at the bottom. So you can just create one rule and then apply it across all, as long as the standards and the requirements the same. So these rules here, the validation rules within real time, super useful when it comes to that validating complete and accurate data collection on an ongoing basis and monitoring that. So with this rule, our system will take a look at all of those different requests. If we have it, it's not sampled at all. And every single time that a user hits that page, we're collecting the request, and then we're validating that request. We're going to tell you every instance in which that validation passes, and that'll be recorded, as well as every instance in which that validation fails. For each failure, you can go in, dig into the actual page load, see what requests were fired, if anywhere, what the data layer looks like if you have a rule pointed at that data layer, to try to really troubleshoot what the issue is, as well as obviously to see the frequency at which these instances are happening, or these failures are happening. So we can say, not just that, in theory, this particular tag is set up properly, but in practice, it's set up properly and it is functioning as expected 90–95% of the time. We can also create some alerts around these things. How those alerts work is once the failure rate passes a certain threshold, then you can be again emailed specifying exactly what the issue is, how frequently, and then you can be linked back to the reporting to dig into the issue. So those are the validation rules within real time. Obviously also the tag rules within the scan reports, which we went through earlier. These two items are meant to help you automate the process of tag monitoring, automate the process of tag auditing, and really save you a lot of time when it comes to ensuring complete and accurate data collection, as well as ensuring that your user's data is secure and protected on the site, and no data leakage is happening. So yeah, that's everything for today. Again, this is just a quick 30-minute training webinar. I want to thank everyone for joining. If there are any questions or anything, please let me know. Don't hesitate to reach out as well. Feel free to shoot me an email, anything that I can help with. We do have another educational webinar next Tuesday that we'd love for everyone to join. That will be myself going through how to use and really leverage tag management to improve user experience. As we're going through here and getting closer to the holidays, some different strategies and different things that you can leverage to improve user experience and hopefully in turn improve the functionality as well as the effectiveness of your website. So thanks everyone for joining. Again, let me know if you have any questions moving forward, and I'll look forward to hopefully seeing you on the webinar on Tuesday. Thanks very much.